welcome everybody. I hope you find this session informative and inspirational, if not, not practical, sadly. We won't be running around, but it's really nice to see you here. We are going to share some slides, so if you do want to turn your camera off, that's fine. But we do sort of warmly welcome you, and if you find the slides aren't meant to be formal, they're just meant to keep us on track, because we all do community work, so you can guess we're a bit of a talker, the lot of us. So I'm going to share my screen, and I will introduce you to our speakers first though, so I'll get them to wave. So we have Sonia and Andrea in my far left, don't know where they are, from Burn. We have Malin. She's an interloper, really. She's from a county council, but really, I know, but has some really good examples, and I've known Malin for quite a while, and hopefully we'll have Jack, who will join us as well. But I'm just going to start today and welcome you. We've just given you a little update to sort of what we do and what the big lunch is. And I just wondered, I was going to ask for a show of hands, which is tricky. How many people have heard of the big lunch or know what it is? Yes. Oh, mostly converted people. How many people have done one? Oh, I need to convert you. So I'm going to quickly run through that, and then I'm going to hand over to our amazing case studies. I'm going to pop you all over there so I can see you, and share my screen properly from there. So as I said, I'm Tracey Robbins, and I'm from Eden Communities. And Eden Communities is the biomes down in Cornwall. People do ask. I do confuse people somewhat, because I work for Cornwall, have a Yorkshire accent, and live in Carlisle. So that's the advantage, I suppose, of heading up the UK outreach programme, which is what I do. And the thing that I suppose inspires me most, I'm a product of community development and always have done community development, so I'm a bit biased, I will admit. But there's this lovely quote from Tony, who used to work for the Eden Project. And this says, "The century is going to demand the very best of us. We need to be flexible, innovative, inspired and strong individuals and communities, ready to respond to the best of our abilities to the challenges ahead." Now our communities have seen that very, very much with the coronavirus and the pandemic. But what we've seen is that upswell of community action is already dissipating. So we need reasons to bring people together. Eden Project Communities, so it's the UK outreach work of Eden Project, which is in all 4 neighbourhoods, really focuses on that people and place. So really trying to build those relationships and those informal networks and connections. So it's all about that, I suppose, the difficult stuff that people can do. It's that preventative stuff. How do you get people to connect and make friends in the first instance where they live? And that's by making every connection and conversation count, and about really encouraging people to listen to each other as well. We focus a lot on giving people reasons to connect and reasons to stay connected. And we try and encourage people to prioritize the time to connect and be with others, and basically to be kind, which sounds very common sense, but we're not always kind. So it's just about reminding us, and really talking to our communities and people about being really aware of the them and us. So whenever you create an us, a community group, a parish, a town council, congregation, whatever, you create a them. So you create, by the very nature of creating an identity for a group of people, you create a them. So how do you work with that? And how do you make sure that you keep your boundaries sort of fluid and flexible so they're still inclusive? And we also do a lot around reducing the stigma of loneliness. So before moving to Eden, I headed up Joseph Rowntree Foundation's neighbourhood approach to loneliness. So I've been looking at loneliness for well over a decade now, and I suppose it's my mission to get people to realise it's an ordinary feeling and nobody's a burden, no one's a nuisance, it's part of our human DNA. What does all that have to do with the big lunch? Well, in the loneliness field, we talk about the permission of snow, and some of you may have heard of that and come across that. It's been going around for quite a while now. And the permission of snow gives people the time and a reason to come out, check on their neighbours, maybe clear the paths for people, see if anybody needs anything. And you can also see in snow where there's not been any footsteps. So you can see where nobody's been. So it's really obvious who might need help and support. But when that snow dissipates, so does that level of humanity, I suppose. So does that level of care and connection. And we've seen absolutely the same with the coronavirus, as I said earlier. There's been a huge upsell of people connecting and WhatsApp groups and lots of response. But as it dissipates, sort of, anyway, but we can see our communities beginning to fracture, and different sections, you know, those who wear masks, those who don't, older people feeling left behind, younger people being blamed, you know, so we can already see that that's fracturing. So what we do with the big lunch is permission. It's permission for people to knock on their neighbour's door and say, do you want to get involved in something bigger? It's a reason and it's permission to stop and get people together and have lunch with your neighbours. And because it's a positive reason to come together, and because people have a positive shared experience and they build connections and relationships at that event, they're more likely to sustain. Another reason we do this is for 1 in 20 people, talking to their neighbours is the highlight of their day. But still, even now, 53% of us don't say good morning or hello to a neighbour. Furthermore, 63 of us would pop round for a cup of tea and a chat if we were asked, if we were invited. So the big lunch is an invitation. That actually goes up to 72% if you say a hot drink, because some people don't like tea. They're not from Yorkshire, all I can say. So again, really quickly, this year we saw 9 million people get involved in the big lunch. That's over 1 million big lunches, and that's quite significant. And I think there's some real powerful things that come out of that. So 4.8 million people said that they felt their sense of belonging. So they felt like they belonged to their community much more after going to a big lunch. And 4.6 million friendships were made. And I think that's huge, you know, and there's lots, we do external research and have done for decades now. And the one I love, this is 6.6 million people felt less lonely after attending the big lunch. And for me, and for my work, that's really key. And 75% said that they're more likely to get involved in community activities. Now, I think that's really important for community groups and parish councils to realise that we need to sort of till the earth and fertilise it and help people build up to join in our groups and our forums. What we also see at big lunches is people use it as a fundraiser. They don't fundraise for us, they fundraise for something that's hyper-local to them. And we saw over £7.4 million raised across the UK for hyper-local causes. So this is money that stays where it's raised. So it's really good as a fundraiser. And the first time this year, we put some information about fundraising in the pack, which is, it's a really nice sort of unintentional outcome. And the big lunch this year, as it did next year, sorry, it's my new campaign year, in 2022, as it did in 2012, will be underpinning Her Majesty's Jubilee, Platinum Jubilee celebrations. So from Thursday the 2nd to Sunday the 5th, we'll be celebrating the big Jubilee lunch, with the main celebration being on Sunday the 5th of June. So we'll be talking to a lot of people about the Jubilee big lunch. But we also recognise, being in all four nations, not everybody may want to join the Jubilee big lunch. So we will continue to do the big lunch. So we'll have a big lunch pack, which is full of resources and free for people to apply for and help you and give you some top tips, and a Jubilee big lunch pack. But in addition to that, we also have the month of community. And this is something that we established last year because we recognised that there was loads of weeks and awareness days already in June. And we really wanted to put that marker in the sand for community so that people remember that their community matters to them post-COVID. And you've got things like Volunteers Week, the Big Lunch, Neighbourhood Watch Week, Carers Week, Loneliness Awareness Week, Refugee Week, Small Charity Week, the Great Get Together, and Thank You Day, all of that in June. So we're trying to encourage people to use June as a celebration, so you can hold a big lunch any time that month or hold any event in your community. And hopefully that will inspire you to get involved in your community action. So that's all I want to say for the time being. And that was a real quick run through. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me and find out more about that or what resources are available, then you are more welcome to do so. But that was a real summary, and I'll take questions at the end. But now I want to hand over to real people who have done it. That said, I have done it everywhere I've gone. But Jack is here. Would you like to give everyone a wave, Jack?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're a bit crackly. You might have to lift it up to a little bit.
Hopefully that's
lovely.
Yeah.
I'm going to share the slides for Jack. So if Jack just tells me when to move on, I will move on for him. So I will move on now. And she says, please move on. It's not moving on. There you go. This is Jack. Ooh, your pattern looks like it's on a different side of your head today.
I know, I had a fresh haircut, I think.
So Jack is a Senior Neighbourhood Development Officer for Dunstable Town Council. And he's kindly joined us as one of 3 of the examples we're going to share today. And I'll just move on to the next slide so Jack can talk a bit about what he's going to run through. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to see you all. So my name's Jack, and I'm the Senior Neighbourhood Development Officer for Dunstable Town Council. I'm based at a youth and community hub, which is called Grove Corner, based in Dunstable. It's in Bedfordshire. And my role is predominantly community development and working with all sectors of the community. That's including youth work. It's including community projects with local schools, local groups, and older people's provision in particular as well. I've worked at the council for roughly nearly 8 years now. My role's changed over that time quite significantly, but I've also seen the communities locally change as well. So yeah, just a brief bit about today. We're going to talk about kind of the big lunch, what we do as the town council. And just one thing to note is we only concentrate on Dunstable as the town council. We do encourage other kind of local towns near us to get involved. But yeah, in terms of residents, it's just mainly Dunstable. So if you can move on to the next slide, that'd be great. It works. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So yeah, the big lunch in Dunstable. So with older people needing more support than ever these days, we feel the big lunch provides a really big platform to do this for, in particular, older people across the town. Dunstable Town Council does have a dedicated older people's officer, and that person runs 2 lunch clubs a week. One's for over 75s on a Monday, and one is for over 55s on a Wednesday. And they're run out of different locations in Dunstable, and we roughly average between 20 and 30 people attending each week. Both of those kind of lunch clubs have guest speakers each week. They have activities, trips, parties, Christmas parties in particular is one up and coming, but they're really, really good fun. They receive weekly support, from the officers that work it, or, they get given useful information on a regular basis. And for them, they're meeting, friends each week. They're getting lots of kind of regular contact time. But a good few years ago, there was a big lunch pop up online, and there was one area in Dunstable that wanted to run something. Now, this particular area is kind of towards the top of Dunstable, and there was a community association that used to run it on a small, very small basis. And it was a lovely event. As my role, I would support that whenever they put it on. Unfortunately, that community association kind of dissolved and kind of left a gap for something like a big lunch. Now, we made the decision that because it was such a brilliant event, we'd love to put that more central in the town to try and reach as many older people as possible. So we thought, you know, how can we reach as many people as possible? So for us, the big lunch was then started in 2017. And after seeing how well, you know, we did a bit of research, it worked across the country. It was lovely to see so many people involved and, you know, making a difference. So for us, you know, we thought big straight away. You know, we want to aim at least probably about 100 older people who lived in Dunstable. So as you can see, the kind of top left picture is our gazebo that we put out, and we provided a free picnic lunch under this, you know, big marquee on the lawn in central Dunstable, with live entertainment and information providers as well, who, you know, could give out useful information, so you know, the people could access it. The very first big lunch for us saw a massive downpour. It wasn't the nicest weathers considering it was June, but over 80 hardy people attended, and it was very much enjoyed. The feedback was brilliant. Since then, every year has seen, you know, waiting lists, and you know, it's clear that this is really needed in the town. So, you know, as you can see from the photos, like, people really love it. And you can see some of the information providers, you know, we've got Age UK there, hospice home as well, and, you know, we've had the local police out as well, and they've absolutely loved it. So from this, we undertook some consultation from these big events, because every year they've been inundated with requests, you know, waiting lists, and we wanted to put on further provision to support older people, because it was clear that something was needed. So, you know, this has allowed us to put on, you know, additional coffee mornings, for example. We do about 10 a year over the town, in different locations, to try and reach older people that, you know, might want to meet some new friends, and we invite professionals to come in and give out some useful information that they might not access locally. So yeah, and we've also been able to put on an event called Rock and Roll. Now, this is basically a small scale big lunch. This is a paid activity after the consultation that we did. But again, you know, we get live entertainment, lunch, information providers. So we're trying to reach as many older people as possible. Just going on to the next kind of section. So we're looking at lockdown lows brought a very challenging time for many people. You know, difficult times for everyone, and including older people as well. So we were unable to provide a big lunch in person, or virtually in 2020. However, did support throughout, kind of with prescription runs, food parcels, and much more for just people, residents of Dunstable locally. With kind of restrictions unknown this year as to whether we could go ahead with such a big event, we kind of made the decision to run a virtual big lunch to keep as many people safe at the time, and obviously following government guidance where possible. So yeah, virtual big lunch, you know, we thought, would it work? Is that going to be possible? And yes, as you can see on the screen, we set up in our little centre here a little star-studded studio, as you call it, and we had live entertainment. So we did have an actor come in and play out to people who joined online virtually. Over 60 joined us live for that virtual big lunch, which, like I say, included entertainment streamed straight into their homes, so they could literally enjoy it, you know, see other people on the screen as well, and yeah, just have some really good fun after kind of the really difficult periods that we've had. And some even invited some of their bubbles that they had over to enjoy the event, where lunches were hand delivered as well. So to each home we delivered not only a lunch, we also created these information packs. So we got professionals to send us any information that they had that they could provide, especially for a really difficult time, and put in the packs for anyone that needed it. So yeah, it was really lovely. So as you can see, and we even had an act who performed at their own home, and we streamed it as well. So yeah, it was really good, real challenge, but really good fun. So our hopes and aspirations, really, our hope now is to run an in-person event in 2022 and bring back the big lunch in full, as you know, we've run in previous years. Our theme for next year will tie in with the Queen's Jubilee, and we're going to make it as fun-filled as possible. The difference we see in people that do attend, you know, when they meet new friends, have smiles on their faces, is all what it's for. That's, you know, that's what we're doing it for. If we can help one person that day, whether that is making a new friend, giving them information that, you know, could be really useful that they didn't know, or even just, you know, having a good day out, enjoying themselves, we feel like we've accomplished so much. And then, you know, for us, one simple action, you know, we love to see everyone else getting involved as well. We try and encourage it where possible. So from a town council perspective, is to consider, just from a small scale point of view, are you able to facilitate a small big lunch, whether that's in a park, community centre, or just a free outdoor space? If you're making a difference to a handful of people, then, you know, that's absolutely brilliant, and you can always just build from there. The different things like the big lunch that it makes to people's lives, even for a short period of time, just for that day, is so worth it. The more of us that do it we can impact so many more people. So yeah, it's I think that's mainly from me, and yeah, from Dunstable Town Council. So thank you for listening, and yeah, questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. And sorry that I'm not presenting properly. You can see the slides coming up. There's the technical know-how of, I don't know how to manage that on 2 screens. Does anybody have any quick questions for Jack before we move on to Andrea and Sonia? Someone has put in the chat, how do you fund these events, Jack? Is it through sponsorship or CBC grant?
So we have a small budget that goes towards this event. We have had kind of someone like grant us some money as well to have extra places. So we did 1 year from a local care home. They wanted to sponsor another extra, I think, 25 places. So we use our small budget and then any grants that we get given. So yeah, and I don't think I mentioned this activity, this big lunch that we run, is all free for anyone that attends. So anyone is completely free. But yeah, so that's how we kind of fund it.
Any other questions for Jack? We can come at the end if you get any more. So thank you so much, Jack.
Thank you.
It's lovely to see so many people enjoying themselves. I'm really pleased I've turned 50 now, so I can join some of the other 50s groups. Looking forward to rock and rolling. Right, now I'm going to hand over to Sonia and Andrea. If you'd like to, I'll try share my screen properly this time. Try share that one. There we go. Can you just see them and not my next slide coming up this time? Yay. I can't look at chat while I'm presenting, so I don't know to the end. So now you'll see the 2 beautiful faces of Sonia and Andrea. So Sonia is the powerhouse behind the big lunch, and has been for many years, and is a former parish councillor of Burn, but is still heavily involved. And Andrea is a current parish councillor and events coordinator. So these two, this double duo, are going to run you through what they do in Burn. Over to you, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you. Our main thing that we'd like to say, first of all, is that Burn is very small. It's a small village on a busy road south of Selby in North Yorkshire. It's divided by a busy road, and even though it's so small, it doesn't really have a focal point. We've got a chapel and we've got a pub, and if you don't go to either of those, then you don't tend to see your neighbours because of the way the village is laid out. The idea of taking up the big lunch as a sort of get-together opportunity became needed after a group of us had got together to survey the village residents about the traffic that was increasing on our main road through the village because of a bypass that had been built that hadn't included bypassing the village. And it made it difficult for people to even cross the road from one side or the other to get on the bus or anything else like that. From that, we got a lot of people interested in what was happening in the village, new people who hadn't been involved previously, and we thought the big lunch would be a good opportunity.
And that's where, once we saw that through the advertising, it perhaps was through one of the local papers, I think the Eden Project had perhaps a bit more of a public, yeah, I think it was, wasn't it? Yeah, it was more of publicity way forward. It gave us the perfect opportunity to start focusing back into our village and community. And as I said, we more or less had a start of a community re-gelling together because of the main road and the issues. But the other instance was the village was always used to doing smaller events going back when, well, going back 30, 40 years ago, they'd have like the sports day, they'd have like flower parade. So the generation that had been before, they were already had that sense of community. And I guess because their parents perhaps were children growing up from perhaps through the Second World War in that sense. So I think that there was a different gelling at that stage and the more focus on knowing your neighbours, getting together with different events. So it more or less gave us the impetus to try and start that up again, because the generation obviously then had moved out. We had the lack of families, lack of youngsters. Our population was perhaps more towards the other end of the scale with the older generation at that point. And it wasn't until perhaps in 2000, early 2000, that we started to get more families starting moving to the area, to the village, perhaps mid 2000s, perhaps even about 2005, 2006. So it gave us more of a reason then to start including, because it's almost starting afresh again. Because me growing up, I remember the community things, whereas people then move away and you lose all of that because our parents then are focused on a different set of priorities in that sense. So I think because we didn't have anything, it was a perfect opportunity to then focus and bring back what the community always had 30, 40 years ago in that sense.
Our main thing was how to get people involved as well when they weren't used to having things happening in the village. So we actually, a couple of us actually did do door-to-door knocking, saying, would you be interested if we ran something and if we used the pub as a basis, because then we've got the drinks, we've got the toilets, it's safe, they've got all the licenses that are needed, we've got a safe car park off the road, which we can put a tent up in. And the first tents were very held together by string, I must admit. Would people be interested? And we got a rough idea of numbers, so it gave us the impetus to actually go ahead. On the back of that, because I'd worked in events and all sorts of things in local government and theatre and telly and all that sort of thing, I'm not ashamed of knocking on doors for other things as well. So I went knocking on the doors of people like Asda, Morrison's, Safeways, you name it, saying, can you help us? Because we want to do a community event. And surely enough, yes, they do have community people and they still have them. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So basically we did that. And just going back to Jack's point about funding, we knew it had to be a free event to encourage people. We're a very small village. We have possibly 400 residents, 200 houses, and that includes outlying farms. And the only way we could run it would be to make it almost donation and self-sufficient. So as well as door knocking people to ask them if they'd like to attend, we also encouraged them to bring something to sit on, because we certainly didn't have enough chairs to go around, despite my shed being full of a lot of plastic ones. And we also said, you know, bring something that you'd like to eat and that you'd like to share with other people. So that was how we kicked it off in 2009, which I think was the first year of any big lunch that was planned.
I think this is a picture of that one,
That's the first
2009.
one, yeah.
Yeah, that was, yeah. I suppose when we first started, we wanted to make that people more or less committed in the sense of bringing a chair, bring some food to share with everybody else, to try and actually get them to come along. And I suppose it was that kind of expectations of whether we'd be there on our own and nobody would turn up. But the reality was, I think, again, it was a generation to start off with that had already always known that side of community. So I think more of the mature side of the village then started welcoming that social side, that get-togethers, starting to chat to people. And I suppose because our streets are quite tiny in that sense, and because of the main road, different streets then got to know other people, whereas prior to all of that, they didn't know each other, even though they'd perhaps been here 20, 30, 40 years. So when we first started, we had a good turnout. We perhaps had about under 100 people, which to us was really welcomed. We were so pleased that we had that number. As I say, even though we're perhaps about nearly 400 residents, just to get a quarter of that we felt was successful. And as the years went on, we kept persevering and consistently doing the big lunch, and it then transpired that we were getting more numbers year on year, which I think me and Sonia have talked about. We did the Jubilee in 2012. We chose the day that it poured down with rain, and we thought, oh, I don't know if anybody's going to turn up. We were having our own pop-up gazebos at this point. We were putting channels of gutter in because the rain was a downpour, and we had people actually phoning the pub to actually ask, is it still on? Is the big lunch still on? And perhaps that was the start where we were getting over 100 people, and it just has increased and increased each year, which I think again is very important. No matter what you feel went on the year before, you need to be consistent, because it's a mindset to get people not hooked on it, but they look forward to it. Yeah. People go around the village and people say, is the big lunch on? When's the big lunch this year, so I can book some holiday, or, you know, so we can plan holidays in that sense. So we've had an increase year on year, which is fantastic, and it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, and I think having done that up to 2019, which was our last real big lunch, obviously we had to change things in 2020. We did a virtual big lunch in 2020 because the weather was decent, and we encouraged people to sit at the ends of their drives, just do a small hello to their neighbours and all the rest of it. 2021, of course, was a washout again, and high winds up here in lovely Yorkshire. So we did abandon ship slightly, but we still, having in 2020 gone round the houses with little goodie bags that gave people quiz books and little tokens for the pub to spend on a meal, a discount and things like that. We then also did that this year, which people again have come to expect. And out of that, we've built more events, even though they're virtual, over the last 18 months. Things like a virtual Halloween, a virtual Easter event, distanced things happening. This weekend, we've got another distanced Santa sleigh driving around the village for a couple of hours with music and gifts for the kids. But I think the important thing is the consistency. And as Jack was saying, is not to exclude people, build on the existing small networks that you might have. We have the chapel and the pub. We've used the pub as the centre of the big lunch, but the chapel we've involved, got the ladies there to get involved so that you're not treading on anyone's toes. I think that's the important thing, is be encompassing and bring in whoever you can, because it's all grist to the mill of helping it be a successful event, and also helping to get the news out to people that there are things happening that they can join in with if they're feeling lonely. It's also been very useful in terms of getting to know people for lockdown, because we managed to set up a Burn Facebook page, and loads of people have been involved with that now, and they expect to be involved with it, and they help out all the time. A tree comes down across the road 2 days ago, stops all the traffic. 10 people were out there within 10 minutes to chop it up, get it clear, sort it out, give the people who'd almost been hit by the tree a hot drink to help their shock and all the rest of it. It's a very important part of the big lunch, is what it goes on to build in the village.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think as well, one point is that me and Sonia have felt that we've run with it for all of these years. We know how each other functions, and I suppose because again we're a small community, we're a small village, that it's been more or less we've taken ownership and charge of it. But we're getting to the stage now where over the last 2, 3, 4 years we're welcoming help within it, so it isn't just us managing it, because ultimately you need that new blood.
You need succession management,
because you can't just be overprotective of things. It's starting to involve other people, involve other ideas, so that then they can run with it. Personally, we don't have children, but the things that we've been doing this past year have also been very children family led, which is important, because then it needs them parents to then become involved, because ultimately at some stage we're going to want to step back from it, and it needs to have that consistency to keep that momentum going. So that's also an extremely important to involve people and let them start their framework of doing.
Yeah, lovely.
Question.
Is that you ladies? You said everything you needed to say. Yeah, lovely. Has anybody got any questions for Sonia, Andrea? I just want a quick reflection before, which is really interesting, because our research shows that it's usually sort of 35 to 65-year-olds that organise big lunches, predominantly women, but actually lots of families, and more men come to a big lunch than women, which we still don't believe, but our research has shown us that. I'm not going to stereotype and say it's because there's food involved, but I know in my own village, all the men came first to help put up the gazebos and get everything sorted and did the real practical stuff, and then it grew. Does anybody have any questions for Sonia, Andrea? Oh, you're a shy lot. We're either doing a really, really good job, people, or we've sent people to sleep. So we'll see. I think we've done a really good job of explaining it.
I've got a question.
Oh, yes, Sue.
Hello, sorry, I just had to pop somewhere. You're talking about a very small community, and it sounds fantastic. My community is about 5,000 people. So how do you upscale something like that to not have such a to make sure that it's manageable and within your comfort for actually organizing? You know, how any suggestions on managing for a bigger place?
Jack?
I don't know. Sorry, Tracy, you.
No, I was going to say maybe Jack. I know we're coming on to Malin in a minute, who I couldn't find a big parish council. So if you want to be my case study next year, hence why I've got Malin. But Jack, you've got quite a population there. I don't think it's quite 5,000, is it? Or is it?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head, but
I would think so. I know Dunstable a bit.
Yeah. So it really depends on, obviously, what, I guess, really depends on, I'd say start small. I'd really say start small to start with, like just see how much you can basically cope with, and then just build from there, and only like build by, to say you do an event for, we do 100 people, but say you only do it for 20 or 30, you know, you can really kind of assess how that goes. So whether that's with the marquee side of it, health and safety wise in particular as well, you know, officer time, like who you can, volunteers, who you can get available, and you will find that from starting off with one, it will then you know, word of mouth will, you know,
Will
spread.
have its
And
own
that's,
babies, hopefully.
that's what we found. You know, we're inundated with requests every time we run it, and it's because, you know, we put it on social media and stuff, but, you know, especially for older people, they don't really use it too much. So they just let neighbours know, friends know, that kind of thing. So I would always say start small, just do what you can, and then just build from there. And then in terms of, you know, whether that is seeking grants, or whether that is seeking, you know, support through donations, like the ladies have just said, I think that's probably your best bet. And then, you know, there's always loads of information out there, especially online and that kind of thing with the big lunch. So yeah, and if you've got any questions, you can all give me a shout. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Jack. And I was going to add to that and just say, so I'm in a parish council of Bowness, and there's about 6 different villages. And basically, the parish council have reached out and asked if someone would coordinate one in each village. So it's not the parish council having to do all the work. It's about encouraging that community. So I think there's a sort of 2-pronged approach. Absolutely agree with Jack. Start small if you want to do something as a parish, but actually communicate it out and encourage your communities and your villages or towns or streets to do it for themselves, because then it's really, really sustainable. I did see a hand up and it's gone back down again. Did he change his mind?
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
So my parish council have made the parish meeting, tried to make it very family orientated. I think I did it 1 year to 2 years ago, and they had a school, a hall, and had activities for the children, and then had the parish meeting, the annual meeting. So would that be appropriate to combine the big lunch and that meeting as well, that people bring their lunch or something? Is it?
Yeah, I think we see. Yeah, we see people do big lunches all year round, and especially with congregations and churches, you'll see there'll be a service and then there'll be a big lunch afterwards, you know. And I think you've got to look at time and resources. You know, it would be really nice if you had some activities, brought everyone together for a big lunch and then had your annual meeting. You know, I think, and we don't dictate how you do your big lunch. So it's how you choose to use it is appropriate, as far as I'm concerned. Oh, excuse you, Martin.
Oh, pardon me.
It's okay. It's all right, mate. Better out than him. Right, I will hand over now.
Say, Tracey, sorry, just to go back to Sue's question, I think there perhaps is a key when there's more people to start focusing on a cul-de-sac or a close to get those. Community isn't always the bigger picture. Community start with getting the cul-de-sac or the close or that street getting to know each other, because then I think, as Jack was saying, that then has that impetus that then the other street will join in, or they'll do their own, and it's about getting together. And then when there's taking the ownership from the council, then there's the individuals that do the organising. Then all of a sudden, within a couple of years, then there's the bigger picture that then you can then have a side bigger community, or then it starts to go off. I would say working on small, as in a cul-de-sac or a street, and encourage those people in that area to get to know each other. And as you say, the big lunch isn't about getting 1,000 people in a field. It's a lot stronger and personal and more important for people to know who their neighbours are, and then that highlights any issues that need to be brought to the parish council even.
Yeah, no, I think that's really sound advice. Thank you, Sonia. Now I'm going to hand over to Malin. And as I said, we love Malin. Can you see the picture of yourself on screen, Malin?
Yes, I can.
That's really handy. That certainly helps. Now if I could find where to move it. Ooh, you don't want to see that, do you? Now I've lost it. Let's try again. I do apologize. I'm not right good at this, am I? I will stop sharing a minute. I've lost you. Do you want to introduce yourself, Malin? And then you will pop up in a minute.
Hi everybody, I'm Malin. I am a Senior Public Affairs Manager at Surrey County Council. I joined last year after working at the National Lottery Community Fund, which is where I came across the Big Lunch for the first time and got to know Tracey and her team and became really passionate about it. So when I joined local government, I thought it would be a great opportunity to sort of bring it in at that level, and they hadn't really heard of it when I joined, and I primarily work on the communities and culture and arts profile. So it was a really good way to bring that in. And the way I sort of pitched it to the council initially was that I thought it fit really well in the way that we wanted to introduce work with communities, and the Big Lunch could help us achieve our community vision for 2030, because we want to create communities that are happier and healthier in general, and really that can only be achieved if we do reduce loneliness and connect people more. Next slide, Tracey. And part of that for us is also building trust, and the Big Lunch is one of those opportunities in the year, I think, where we can go out and easily speak with residents and partners and sort of build that trust so we can have more community-led actions going forward and also create a sense of identity. We're a really large county. We have 1.2 million people here and we're really close to London, so it often feels really disconnected. So I proposed that we would actually, the first time having a Big Lunch, go via our libraries. We have 52 libraries. So our big plan was this year to host 52 Big Lunches across the county, where we could invite people over a picnic and games for children, have conversations with them about the community and how we could be working with them and work with partners and parishes. Next slide. And obviously that didn't happen because COVID was still around, and we were told end of April that we wouldn't be allowed to do anything of the likes. I was still really keen to put out messages and messaging about the Big Lunch in general. So I reached out to a lot of partners that I could find, Ds and Bs, parish councils, any messaging board we could find. And we used the Eden pack that was sent around for communications and sort of added some of the council messaging to it and communities messaging that we had, and shared social media posts for them to reshare on of their profiles, and essentially just ask them to put the word out and ask residents to have really small, nice Big Lunches on their doorsteps and in their gardens. Part of that I found really incredible was our libraries were really our most active partner in that. They put up posters, they had conversations with residents, and they put up little book displays that had recipe books on it, and we're just really keen to participate in this. And you know, libraries are the heart of our communities, so we thought it was a great place to start this as a council. And we shared 15 social media posts over 4 weeks, and it was all without money behind it. So it was just organic posts. And we reached 600,000 people, which was quite incredible, just via Nextdoor and Twitter. And some younger members in the team do this who are really into social media. So they put funny GIFs out and just made it really engaging and fun. And it didn't cost anything. And we still managed to get the word out. And for us, that was sort of, we were hoping to build a foundation for next year if we want to work, well, we definitely want to do it again. And this way our partners and residents too already know a bit more about the Big Lunch, and hopefully it will be much easier to do this. Next slide. And that leads me to our internal campaign. I felt quite disheartened when we found out we couldn't do anything. And I just joined the council 6 months before the Big Lunch was supposed to happen. And I'd only been in the office once, and we're a really large organization. We're 10,000 people, over 10,000 people. So I felt really isolated and thought, well, what can I do? I could do a Big Lunch. And I got a few members of my team involved, and we thought we would do a Big Lunch day or a couple events. And our HR team essentially said, nobody wants to do virtual events anymore. Like, nobody will show up. And we didn't get discouraged. We said, well, let's try anyway. And we thought a way around that would be to get as many people involved as possible to actually participate in this from the beginning. So we just scheduled a bunch of meetings with lots of people across the council. We asked them for 10 minutes, nothing more, all virtual, and just pitched our idea and asked them whether or not they wanted to lead an event that sort of would reduce loneliness and boost morale and really help us further collaborative working across the council, because we work quite in silos, and that's really difficult. So we didn't have any funding. We did ask eventually for a tiny bit and got £100, I think. And we also asked people like the Eden Project whether or not they might have some speakers, and collaborated with staff networks. Next slide. And we were quite surprised what actually ended up happening. We had thought maybe 1 or 2 events, and we ended up having 15 events. So a Big Lunch event became a Big Lunch week, an internal one. And we hosted lots of different events, from having an art session and a big book lunch, and our communities team talked about their community's work and told people how they could get involved. We had a charity come and talk about how you could volunteer in Surrey and do that kind of work. We also had an internal lunch page where there was a recipe competition and lots of info about the big lunch, and just thought it was, you know, make it as engaging as possible, essentially. The next slide. And yeah, we ended up having 500 people engaged at the council over the whole week, which was incredible. We really didn't anticipate that. And we had really incredible feedback. We sent a survey around and people said they got to know so many new people. I mean, me alone, I got to know coroners and teachers and people from policy, and I found out about jobs that I didn't even know existed. And lots of people said they made new connections, and 94% actually said they would want to do it again next year or host their own big lunch, which, you know, it really felt like something came out of it. And, you know, half a year on, it still feels like it's much easier to reach out. I think a barrier was sort of broken, that you can just team someone and ask them to get involved and to just have a quick chat. You know, it doesn't have to be complicated. So my top tips, I think, start small and don't get discouraged. You know, collaboration is key in the end. Just find people to help you, I would say. You know, I couldn't have done it without my team, and then like everybody who decided to lead an event. And it didn't have to be complicated. The big book lunch was really just coming together, and people had a picnic virtually and talked about their favorite books. And you don't need a budget. I think a lot of tools are available to all of us that are free. And I think the smaller, the better sometimes. All the like tiny libraries we have that shared stuff on social media got a lot of engagement because they have a following, you know, a really passionate following. But yeah, I think my most important tip would be have fun. Don't get stressed about it, because, you know, this is for you just as much as for the people you're doing it for. But yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Malin. And as I say, I just want to share this sign. We are ordinary people trying to change the world. Join us. And I think that's what we are all basically doing. I'm really mindful you're going to get run out of time because we've got that warning. But does anybody have any quick questions for Malin? I think what we've tried to show today is how you can do it in a sort of busy, divided community, in a small place with a group of people, and also how you can use this internally where you work and where you live to create connections. And what's really beautiful is those connections and relationships keep going. So you start something off and it rolls of its own initiative, and that's what we all need, I think. Any questions? No, you can all run away to your next workshop now. Thank you everybody for your time and your brain cells, and special thanks to my speakers, who will be all warmed up and even slicker next time. So yeah, or we might talk for longer, remembering everything we forgot to say this time. Thank you all very much.